What's up, guys? Today I'm joined with Jason Su, who is the author of the new poker book called Poker with Presence. I absolutely love this book. There's so many practical things for you to learn from it. And I wanted to have a conversation with Jason today to expand on those concepts and give you guys some really actionable steps to take. So, Jason, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is great.
Awesome. So, for those of you who don't know much about yourself, I'd love you to explain a bit about your background and how you came to write the book Poker with Presence, which we're going to dig into in depth today.
Yeah, sure. I basically got really into poker around the moneymaker area. That was kind of when I was entering college and turning 19, 20 was when Moneymaker won the main event. So got to just ride that whole wave of energy with poker when everybody in the whole world seemed like they were picking up poker around that time. And really just grew to love the game more each day, and eventually was playing for a living after I finished school. And so a lot of live poker, a lot of online poker. Have kind of done all the things ever since Black Friday, more live poker because I live in the US. And also around that time got introduced to a lot of ideas that I ended up writing about in the book around things like body intelligence, connecting to your body, connecting to your emotions, and have been really just excited as much about implementing those tools into my experience of playing poker as anything else in the game itself for the last many years. And so, I've also done quite a bit of coaching throughout my poker career, and found that when I started to introduce these ideas to my students, in addition to whatever games we were working on for them, that this would kind of like increase their learning quite a bit when they were more connected to their environment, more connected to their body, and getting skilled at using their awareness in different ways. So eventually it just was like, I think I should just write it all down and put it into a book. And I'm so glad I did. And here we are.
Yeah, amazing, awesome, super exciting. And yeah, I think we talked a bit off camera about how you thought this topic was very, very powerful and no one was talking about it. It's like no one was talking about how to connect with your body and be super present. And we're talking also about how it's a little bit of a difficult concept. It's very easy to talk about it in theory, but it's hard to make it practical. And what I really loved about this book is everything was action step orientated with exercises. So every chapter finishes with exercise to do, which makes it super easy to implement all these things. So we're going to go into this today, and we're going to share the key concepts from this book and really elaborate on them to help you guys to build poker with presence and how to build that into your life. So the book, a pretense of the book is that knowledge gets you 85% of the way and presence gets you the final 15%. So how did you come up with those numbers, and how do you think that plays out in real time?
Yeah, I think that, well, for one thing to, hit on one thing you just said, like, I think it is important to like not mythologize presence as this like way out there thing that you can't have unless you're special, unless you're chosen, right? And that's why it felt really good to have, put in like actual things you can do so that you can feel the difference between before you did this exercise 5 minutes ago, and then like after you did it, and you're like, oh, I do feel more present, and I do feel calmer and more centered and able to like play my best and choose what I really want to do in each moment. So that was like a really big thing for me. As far as, yeah, the final 15%, yeah, I've always thought that like a lot of people kind of go in one of two directions. They either are like, none of this stuff matters and we just need to study, study, study and get as good as we can get, which, reasonable viewpoint. And then also people kind of fall into the other side where they're like, oh no, I just need to like meditate more and exercise every day and eat healthy and I'm going to crush everybody. And it's like, no, you need to study more too, right? And so I wanted to like just make sure that people weren't thinking that I was taking this stance that like if you just use the tools in this book and nothing else, you're going to become a super elite poker player, right? There still needs to be this recognition that like, yeah, without a baseline level of poker intelligence, strategy, of deep foundational analysis that you've done, hundreds of hours of study, these tools will help you feel better and they'll help you be a more connected human. You'll have better relationships, but they probably won't help your poker as much as you think they will if you don't have the knowledge to go along with it. But once you do, and if say you are one of those people who just studies, I do believe that you're leaving money, leaving potential on the table if you don't look into, how can I really like take my performance to another level in game so that my subconscious can kind of like come out and play and let me know, what's the most important piece of information right now, what's kind of like a thing that might really work out right now. When I'm really connected, I can feel those things. We've all felt it, playing poker. I think that one of the reasons why the book has resonated with people is because everybody who's played a lot of poker has had those days where it's like, yeah, I was just locked in and I had the answers, right? And so it's all just like, how can we get into that state to access that information?
Amazing. I love that. And yeah, like you said, I think often people go one of two ways. All study, all learn a theory, all solve a work, and they think like meditation and getting present is this like conceptual stuff, but it doesn't apply to them. And on the flip side, people go the other way. Like it's all about just being calm, meditating, really still, intuitive, but then they don't put the hard kind of learning time in. So yeah, I really like how you set the pretense to begin with. Like, look, this is not the magic pill in to fill a void of not studying. You've got to work hard on your game and get that knowledge base. But once you've got the good knowledge base and you're really working hard on your game, the presence is the access. It's almost like you've got that big net amount of knowledge, and presence allows you to access it at the right times when it matters most. And yeah, I like that. How practical it just starts off with a really practical kind of pretense. So what I liked about the beginning of the book was it starts about your background with tennis. So can you explain a little bit about your tennis background and how before you started using poker with presence in poker, you were using these concepts in tennis? And I'll share a story about my recent experience with this as well. So yeah, your tennis background, if you could explain a little bit about that one, would be great.
Yeah, growing up in high school, I was a very serious tennis player. It was like the only thing I cared about, and I trained so much and trained so hard. And I think I don't remember why I ended up doing this, but I noticed that I was interested in buying books about like the mental side of tennis. And so I bought two books. One was called like Winning Ugly by Brad Gilbert, which was like pretty cool. It definitely helped me, figure some stuff out. But The Inner Game of Tennis by Tim Galway, which I don't remember. I don't think I ended up even reading the whole thing at the time because it's kind of long. But I remember like getting through certain parts of it, and I just remember one specific part of it where he was like, you just need to give your conscious brain something to do while you're playing tennis so that it doesn't mess you up while you're actually playing, right? And the way you're going to play your best, he said, is when you can shut off that part of your brain that's always trying to like manage everything, micromanage this and that, and put your feet in this exact position and make sure you follow through. And he said that like if you just can shut your brain off from that, your body will do all those things by itself, because you've seen it happen, you've seen the pros play, and it's going to be fine if you just shut that off. And so he has this thing in the book where it's like all you want to do when you're playing tennis is, as the ball's coming, try and watch the seams, even though it's spinning really quickly. Just see if you can like see them right before you hit the ball. And so I took that and kind of ran with it. And I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but I just had this one thing where I knew how to shut off my brain, and I won so many matches that I had no business beating these guys in. And that's kind of like how it started.
Yeah, amazing. So I read that opening chapter of the book, and me and my friends have just started a weekly tennis game, and we haven't been playing that many times. I think we had played about 4 times before I read the book, and I read the In a Game of Tennis straight after that. And yeah, the concept is basically to still the mind, give the mind something to focus on, and very just much be present. And as I was playing, and I was trying to, before I understood this concept, I was overthinking everything. And then every time I made a mistake, I was like, oh, I should have hit it there, I shouldn't have done that. And I was trying to correct my posture, my feet aren't in the right place, and my head's really, really, really busy. And after reading your book, I was like, okay, what you need to do is just like focus on the seam. So like really still the mind and just allow yourself to be in the moment. And when I did this, my performance just like skyrocketed. Like the first time I did that, everyone was like, oh, Adam, you haven't made an unforced error for like the last 20 minutes. And I was like, I don't even know how I'm doing this. I'm not even thinking about where the ball's going. It just seems to be going in the court now, and it used to go out. And it simplifies, and it simplifies and gets you in the moment. And I think it's good to start the conversation here because presence is applicable in everything. It's applicable in everything you're doing. If you're in the moment, you're better than being in your head and lost in your thought. So what I find very useful is concepts that are applicable in poker, but also in life. And when you get that good crossbreed, you know you're onto something really good. So when presence is applicable and super usable. So for me, for example, I read the introduction to your book. I then got in a game of tennis. I read like the first 20 pages, and instantly I was able to use those concepts and just quickly give my mind something to focus on, and a big increase in performance just by being present in that one activity. And it's really good when you can transition skill sets into multiple things. So what you're going to learn today, guys, it'll also teach you how to be more present in life, whether it's in sports, whether it's with your partner. It's just everything. It's like one of those things that just being in the moment and finding ways to be in the moment is going to help you to do better at everything. I think it's a great way to get started.
Yeah, for sure. It's about poker because I happen to be a poker player.
Yeah.
But these tools you can layer into any aspect of life if you're finding you're struggling to find connection, yeah, with a partner, or in your work, if you do something else besides play poker, or in sports, whatever you want to feel more connected to, you can use these exercises for, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's, if you can learn to do that, you learn the concepts even better. Like if you're just using like these concepts for poker, you'll have a lot of success in them. But once you start to cross use them in everything in your life, it just becomes who you are. You just become a more present person, not I'm going to turn on the present skill for poker. You just learn to use these tools everywhere. And I think for myself, like I was using these tools in lots of areas. Like I was using different versions before I read the book, but I've upgraded them since. But yeah, I wasn't using them in certain things. My mind was very busy, but I was doing certain activities, and I was like, oh, why am I letting my mind be busy during this activity? Okay, it works here as well. So yeah, really practical to use everywhere. All right, guys, so we're going to go into 5 key concepts today. There's more than 5 concepts in the book, but these are the 5 that I wanted to expand on today and get Jason to speak about because I think they're all very, very powerful and lots of practical applications. So the first one of those is the zone of genius. All right, so could you explain to everyone what the zone of genius means to you?
Yeah, so I think everybody can relate to what it feels like to be in the zone of genius. Once I kind of talk about it, you'll kind of know that you've been in it and where and when. But it basically refers to a state of being in which whatever you're doing, you notice that the time just flies by because you're just so immersed in the activity, right? And you look up and it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 3 hours, right? Playing poker some days it's like, oh, it's been 8 hours. That's crazy. And so that's one sign that you're kind of in the zone of genius, where you're just enjoying what you're doing so much you don't even notice the time go by. Another trait might be that you really notice that like you're just naturally better at whatever you're doing than other people, and other people notice and kind of like comment on it. You're like, oh wow, you're just like really good at this, and you start to get these compliments in it, but to you it just feels totally normal and natural. And you might have thoughts like, well, isn't everybody kind of like good at this? And so that's another sign that you might be in your zone of genius. And a third one is just like, yeah, you just feel like you could do this thing all day every day, and just super excited to kind of be in that place. And so I wanted to write about zone of genius because people tend to think, by the way, this is not my concept, I didn't invent it. It comes from a friend and mentor of mine, Gay Hendricks, who wrote this book called The Big Leap. So if you want to read more about that, highly recommend that book. And yeah, what I wanted to write about it because people sometimes think that like the zone of genius is only like in one certain activity, right? It's like, I only feel this way when I play poker. I only feel this way when I'm painting. I only feel this way when I'm cooking, right? And what I wanted to get across is that it's not about the activity that you're doing, and it's about like how you're going into the activity. What parts of you, how can you bring that genius, that essence of you that loves to do what you're doing so much into anything that you're doing? And so my experiment with the exercise in that chapter was to show you that you can kind of deconstruct how you created that feeling in the first place when you were doing it in the past, and give you a very actionable way to take it forward so that you can feel really in the flow of what you're doing, no matter what you're doing in life, which makes everything a lot better.
Awesome. So if someone's watching this and they're thinking, okay, well, what is my zone of genius? How would someone identify what their current zones of genius are naturally so then they can reuse that state in other scenarios? So how would you discover that?
Yeah, what I would do is focus on verbs and get very specific about what you were doing when you felt that way in the past. So if I were to take somebody and I was coaching them and they were saying, I want to know how to do this, I might say, okay, tell me about a time when you really felt this flow that you were in your zone of genius, right? And they might say, okay, poker, right? And I say, okay, great. So now tell me, like, when you're playing poker and you're feeling in the zone like this, tell me what you're doing in terms of verbs, right? And so they might say something like, so for me, when I'm playing poker and I'm in my zone of genius, I know that I am doing some combination of synthesizing information very rapidly. That's one thing I do really, really well. Observing my opponents really closely and keenly, but not in like an overactive way, but just like I'm just naturally just like observing, and I'm kind of like always adjusting my strategies on the fly based on what I see. So I might call that like calibrating, right? So the verbs I would pull from there might be like synthesizing, observing, and calibrating. And then so what I would say to the client is something like, when you're going to play poker, don't think of it as you're about to go play poker. Go think of it as like, I'm about to go synthesize, calibrate, and observe, and I'm going to do that all day. So, whatever you're about to do, I know that when I'm about to go do anything, if I come to those activities using those verbs, I can activate that feeling, like, and it can be something that like I don't even enjoy doing normally, but when I approach it from that mindset, it's like, no, I'm going to be like doing these things, then I find that I get into that zone and time just goes by.
Amazing. So what I'm getting from that is you identify the key kind of feelings you have and attributes in verbs of when you're at your best. When you're at your best, how would you describe that? And use your own language that applies to you. And then what you can do is you can have those verbs, and because it's so powerful when you set intention, you can carry those same verbs into other activities, and those will then reconnect you with that activity and turn on your kind of zone of genius, even though it might not necessarily be a default. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yeah, and it also like breaks it down into much simpler like bite-sized steps you can take. Like if I said, just go be in your zone of genius, go be at your best, you'd be like, oh, I'll do my best, but I don't know what you're talking about. But then if I said, go and focus on synthesizing information, and be like, okay, I can do that, right? And they're the same thing. This is what makes you your best. But when you tell people like, oh yeah, go be in the zone, go get in the zone, they're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so verbs are very powerful because you control them, right?
Yeah.
You don't really control how you feel or whether you can feel like you're in the zone, but you can control your actions. And so verbs are very powerful in that way.
Yeah. And could you also say, like, after a session, so like say you've got your three verbs and you're going to try and use them at the poker tables to turn on your zone of genius, could you then after a session like reflect on it and go, oh, was I activating those three verbs? Was I able to do that? Like say you had a session that didn't go too well. Would you then reflect on that and then look back and go, okay, oh yeah, I didn't switch on my synthesizing or my calibrating or my enthusiasm or my curiosity? Yeah, love it. And it's almost like training yourself to be able to switch that on more often. And I think people miss this part of it where setting intention is so powerful. Like if you just go into a session and you hope to be in the zone, you hope to be playing your best poker, but you're almost like just leaving it to chance. The odds are very low, like unless it does go your way. But if you set the intention that I'm going to, and you just do like three verbs that I think it was calibrating, synthesizing, and what was the third one for you? Observing, awesome. Yeah, and you just use those verbs over and over. They then become like almost like a catalyst to turn on that high performance. So yeah, I think the kind of takeaways will be I think you say visualize first. So visualize going into when you're in the zone, you've played your best poker, been in a very good, effortless state. Then describe it in verbs. Like I think you use 3 verbs to describe it, or use your own language relative to you, and then choose and commit to that, and start using it over and over, and see if you can switch on that feeling and those kind of high level performance.
Yeah, it's like actually like super simple when you just break it down into that. And it's like nobody's doing this,
Mhm.
right? Everybody's just like going into their sessions like, all right, I'm gonna play. But what does it really mean to play, right? And so just having that like intermediate step, I think, has had great success for lots of people.
Yeah, love it. And I also think a lot of people do things like, I want to play my A game today. I want to be in the zone. I want to be in a flow state. But there's such a disconnect with what that is. It's like, of course, yeah, it's like, I want to play great poker. It's like, yeah, of course. So I think for you to have it simplified into 3 verbs is really powerful. And yeah, language is so important. And the way we can like engage ourselves through language is really, really powerful. So yeah, I think if you could find your 3 verbs of your zone of genius and start every session before you start, switching those on, or telling yourself to switch those on, you're going to give yourself a much, much higher chance of actually activating that zone of genius. And then if you didn't for that session, you could look back and go, well, why didn't I get to a flow state today? What went wrong? I got distracted. I was overthinking. I didn't switch on these 3 verbs which I need to activate, and then work on it. And like, this is the thing as well. Like, it's not going to be a perfect process. It's not going to be like, okay, I said my 3 verbs. I played great poker, made no mistakes. There's going to be elements of times you can't get into these states, but the key is to keep setting the intention, and trying to turn on those high performance states. Awesome. All right, so that's the first concept, zone of genius, which is awesome. The second one is body intelligence. All right, so you talk about, we have IQ for our intellect, we have EQ for our emotional intelligence, and then we have BQ for our body intelligence. So can you explain a little bit to the audience what body intelligence is?
Yeah, so body intelligence is kind of honoring the idea that we don't just live here in our heads, right? And that we have a whole body here that is constantly taking in information about our surroundings, what we're up to. Do we feel safe? Do we feel threatened? And if you take it all the way back to the evolutionary uh, kind of theory of things, and how we were, 2 million years ago, right? How did we know when there was an animal uh, lurking behind us, even when it was completely silent, right? We just, our body just kind of like sensed it, right? How do you know when something's poisonous or is going to make you sick, right? Your body just kind of like, don't eat that when it smells it. Or if you've ever been served food and you smell it, you're like, no, right? And your body's just telling you no. And so your body has uh, millions of years of intelligence coded into the DNA. That's why we still exist today as humans, because of all the intelligence that is gathered. And so I think that, especially in poker, people just live in the head, and they act like that's the only thing that is. But in reality, they're cutting themselves off from a lot of intelligence that they have around tiny little minutia, small details that the brain can't pick up in real time on a conscious level. It's all subconscious. And so, the more you can connect to your body, the more you can allow your brain and your body to flow together and work together, the more you can just in real time pick up these tiny adjustments that need to be made based on things that you're sensing are happening. And I think it's a really untapped resource, not just in poker, but in the world as a whole.
Yeah, amazing. I think for poker players watching this, almost all poker players are too in their head. You've got very good analytical, logical thinking processes, and as a result, you don't give any kind of attention to the body. It's almost like this, why would I need the body? I've got the mind, I'm really logical. And what you're saying is like the body's picking up more subtle vibrations of energy. There's more, like, it's almost like, imagine you've got other information available to you which can't be picked up by the brain. Do you want access to it? Would you like to access that extra information which is available to you? And yeah, find that connection and find a way to be in tune with your body. And what I liked, one of the quotes you said is, without connection to our body, it's too easy to fall into a state of unconscious fear. And I really like that one. So could you elaborate on what that means when you're not connected with your body, and how that leads you to being an unconscious fear state?
Yeah, I think that, when you're connected to your body, you can kind of have a better idea when you are feeling scared, and when you're not, your mind, you're still feeling scared, and your mind is scrambling and creating all these thoughts that are like kind of based around these fears. So your mind just kind of starts to create stories, projections, ideas, and they're all based on things that may or may not be true. And then you just run off and start creating entire strategies and counter strategies based on these thoughts that you're having, which may or may not even be true. And so, you know, when you're in fear and you can kind of presence that and understand, oh, I'm feeling scared right now, then that allows your mind to have some space to actually just be with that. And from there you can actually like choose and have a better idea of what's true and what is just kind of like a manifestation of the fear in your mind.
Amazing. All right, so what I'm getting there is I'm sold. Body intelligence is really powerful. I need to start using it more. I'm relying too much on logic. I'm completely out of tune with my body. I don't know what's going on. How do I start to build this body intelligence? What's the process to make this practical so I can actually do this?
Yeah, so my favorite are breath and movement. I think those are things that you can always go back to, right? So breathing, if you really can slow your breathing down in a way that feels really good, do maybe even combine breath and movement together. That is going to just always be a really nice catalyst to resetting the nervous system. You know, one thing that you can always do to take yourself out of the fight or flight is breathe in and out slowly through your nose in increments of like 5 to 6 seconds in, 5 to 6 seconds out through the nose. And that is just naturally going to take your nervous system out of fight or flight. Beyond that, you know, one thing that I think people do that locks them into fear states a little more often than necessary is that they get a little too habituated in their movement patterns. So, you know, if you think about the traditional poker player, you'd see, you know, a little bit hunched over, kind of maybe arms folded or arm here, or whatever it is. But we all like repeat the same movement patterns over and over and over. And we have so many more movement patterns available to us, right? And one thing that is true is that when you create a new movement pattern in your body, right? Body intelligence, you create a new pathway between your brain to your body. So the way my brain and my body relate when I'm sitting like this, very still, typing on a keyboard or working a mouse, is going to be very different and have less possibility to see openings than when my body is operating kind of like this, right? And I'm non-habitual with my movement. The more I open up my body, the more I create different neural pathways, the more I'm able to just see solutions to problems that otherwise I feel like, oh, there's like, I just can't see a way out of this. But that's because you're in this current frame of mind. Your body leads, right? Your brain follows your body, not the other way around. So if you can, you know, train yourself to breathe and move in different ways, your brain will naturally start to see more solutions organically on its own.
Yeah, love this. So some really practical things you were talking about there, the breath and the movements and how we get into like habitual ways. Like it's very interesting. Not many people think about breath, even though we're breathing literally 24/7. And not many people think about movement or the body postures and the positions they're in. And we don't realize the impact both breath and movement have on the brain. Like we end up in states and we only see solutions to problems based on the state we're in. And both the breath and movement are gateways to higher level thinking. All right. So I think what's really interesting what you're talking about, and I love even the words you used, train yourself to use the breath and movement. So for myself, like when I used to play poker, I used to find it difficult to slow down breathing in the heat of battle. And the reason was I didn't used to train it enough away from the tables. So myself now, I've realized that, like I said, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, it slows down the sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or flight response, and it basically, yeah, gets you out of that kind of active mode. But if you don't use this often, you're not going to be able to use it in game. So for myself, when I'm doing this, I try to have 50 mindful breaths in a day. And by that I mean 50 different times in my day. I remind myself just to connect to the moment. Just it's only 1 or 2 breaths, and I don't do it every day. Like sometimes I'll only do 20, but I'm always trying to go, can I connect with this moment with a mindful breath? And when you get in the habit of doing that, then it's at the poker tables and your mind's going to be crazy. You can use that again. Can I use the breath? So I think what people miss about breathing is they try to apply it just when they're tilting. They try to apply just at the hard part, and it's almost like running the like 100 meters with no training and expecting to be quick. It's like you've got to do the training on this stuff because you've got a habitual way of doing it and you're trying to break a pattern. So if you can like use breathing throughout your day, take a slow breath. Every time you feel a little bit stressed, can you the default be, I'm going to take a slow breath, just 5-6 seconds in, 5-6 seconds out, and see how it feels, connect with your body. And then the other one, movement as well. So I try to always, I don't know how I've developed this, but I basically extend my fingers by my side. I extend my fingers and then I clench my hands, and I do that 3 times. I do it all the time when I'm like leaving a room, when I'm leaving one room to another room. And that's my way of just connecting with my body and reminding myself to be present physically. And I think that's a really big one because like you were saying, we often get lost in our heads. And if you're lost in your heads, yet you miss. So like what's the kind of the key takeaways I'm getting from you are when we're in our heads, we're missing this extra information from the body. So if you're a poker player, you want as much information as possible. You want to be intuitive. You want to be able to absorb more information. And also you want to stop the brain from being overactive. And like you said, go into that unconscious fear state. So the more we can connect to our breath and our movement, our bodies, the more in the moment we are, which shuts off like the kind of fight response for the brain, but also allows us to access more information. So if you guys are like, okay, well, how would this help me? Do you think accessing more information would be useful? It's definitely going to help you to improve your performance. And the final thing, which we haven't touched on so far, I think you touched on the concept of internal mapping. So what does internal mapping mean to you in the concept of body intelligence?
Yeah, it's on that same track of being aware of like what sensations are happening inside you. Because if you can kind of like be in tune with, my stomach's rumbling, my chest is tight, my shoulders are kind of up, and just noticing that those things are happening, that in itself is a practice that gets you connected to your body. Because if you're just living in your mind and you're thinking deep in thought, you have no idea like what's happening in your body. So just that ability to check in and notice, oh, like I'm having this sensation kind of like on my side here. And, not necessarily correlating it with anything specifically, but just, oh, like that's just notice that's what's happening and it's a little uncomfortable. That in itself is a form of presencing yourself in the moment, right? Not looking for a solution, just noticing what's happening in itself will bring you into the moment.
Love that. So we've got the 2 practical kind of tools, which are breath and movement, and then we've got just like the internal check-in. And I love the quote from the book. You said, the goal is not to fix, solve, or understand. The goal is to be with. So it's just to be with the feelings in your body. I think as poker players, often it's challenging because we're so used to solving problems and giving meaning to events and how we can fix them and how we can do better at them. But with your body, that's not the goal. It's not like to go, oh, I feel this way, how do I change it? It's just a little check-in. It's just a little, how am I feeling right now? Just that conscious check-in of how you're feeling is all you need to do. Like be with that feeling, get you back into your body, get you back in touch. So yeah, really awesome. That's really, hopefully people watching this are going to start trying to train themselves to take slower breaths, start using different movements to get their body more engaged and get used to checking in with their body just to see how they're feeling. I think super practical and yeah, really good to be able to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the irony is that doing these things is how you end up solving problems at a higher level, because everybody who's played poker has had the experience of like, the instant somebody finished betting, there's like, oh no, he doesn't have it, right? And it's just like, yeah, that's definitely true. And in those moments, what is true is that you were connected to your body, because if you weren't, you wouldn't have been able to process all that information so quickly and just know what the proper answer was. And so everybody has had that experience, and so this is how I think you get to have it a lot more often.
Yeah, love that. So yeah, very practical, and also like as poker players, I think we've always got to link stuff back to being able to make better decisions at the poker table. So it's all good to be very still and present away from the tables, but this is going to help you to access more information at the tables in like definitely in high pressure scenarios as well. I feel like often when there's a lot on the line, that's when these practices are really, really the most beneficial. When it's like a big pot, there's a lot at stake, that's when the mind can really go crazy. And for you to have the skill set to go, all right, stay in my body during this key moment. And like we were talking about, you have to train yourself to do this away from the tables. All right, it's almost like an athlete trains all year round just to be able to run a fast race in the summer or the Olympics. You got to put the training and put the reps in. So yeah, take these concepts on board, and yeah, it will 100% allow you to make better decisions and solve problems at a higher level. All right, so touching on, so almost like a good follow-on from that one is the third concept I want to talk about today, which is training your awareness. So we're all aware that awareness is a quite in the main circles of what we need to be working on as poker players, be more aware, be more present. So how did someone go about training their awareness, and why is it important to do that?
Yeah, it's not about like being more aware, but it's just being having different options for how you're going to be aware. So everybody kind of tends to fall into one of two categories, once again, of either like kind of getting my energy, my attention, this is mine. I get a little, when things aren't going well, I get a little sunken into my own experience, my own thoughts, my own like, oh, what does it all mean, and this and that, right? And other people, when they're stressed and there's tension and they don't really, and they're in fear, they tend to go out, right, and getting into other people's business. Why are you doing this? What's your problem, right? And so these are two very distinct styles. And so in the training your awareness chapter, I lay out an alternative of like basically learning how to get skilled at both, so that your attention can circulate and move around the room, move around your space, so that it doesn't get stuck and exhaust you from just one place. So the more you can kind of circulate it and be in touch and have your attention flow, right? That will create more flow inside you as well.
Okay, awesome. So how do we do that? How do we start to circulate this awareness? How do we go about that in a practical way?
You can really just start with the most basic thing of just practicing giving your attention to something outside of you for a while, and noticing different aspects of it, right? And getting curious around that, and then bringing your attention back inside you and your inner experience, whether it's thoughts you're having or sensations that you're having inside you, or your breath, right? And then just repeating that cycle of like going out and then going in and then going out and going in, and not with any agenda around like it has to be equal timeshares, or it has to be like quick, or it has to be slow, but just having an awareness of, if I'm tired, if I notice I'm not at my best, it's very likely that my awareness has gotten caught either inside of me or outside of me, and it's just time to like give it a little switch.
Love that. That's really really good. Yeah, what you said there, like when we're say tired, we often like I find myself when I'm tired, I often go too internal. So I'm starting to like connect with the feelings too much and get too. I feel tired, and that's the time where you would switch your awareness externally, or and then back in. And I think that's having the skill set to go internal, external, and realize where you basically just you went too one track minded. You went either too internal or too external. I'd say for myself, like the most challenging aspect of this is low energy states. When you're in a low energy state, to be too internal. I think having the knowledge that okay, I'm basically getting lost in this internal low energy state. If I could switch my awareness to the external, that would loop this awareness back, and it would give me kind of a break from the kind of the loop that I was lost in.
Yeah, it's really designed to just refresh your experience
Mhm.
of what you're experiencing right now. So, whichever one it is that you do, just do the opposite for a little while. And you'll find that, okay, like that's kind of a nice reset. I feel like I can rest into myself again.
I love that. Yeah, whatever you do normally, do the opposite more. That's a key takeaway. And yeah, one thing you said, which is really key for awareness, was curiosity. Curiosity is the key, and I find this in everything. When I'm curious about stuff, I've just got so much energy. If I'm like, even your book, when I read it and I got really curious of it, I can just go through the whole thing very quickly because it doesn't take energy when you're curious. And often I think as poker players, especially when you've been playing a long time, you start to get a little bit bored with the habitual nature of how to play spots, and as a result, you kind of switch off and your awareness goes down. And curiosity is one of those things that you've got to almost give the brain a reason to like stay engaged. And when it's had the same, when we have novel stimulus, that's great. Novel stimulus gets you curious. When you're interested, you get curious. But often we need to actively switch on our curiosity. And I feel like this is really, really big. And I find myself when I don't do this, everything's so much more difficult. So for you, like, how do you switch on your curiosity? If someone's watching this going, yeah, I struggle to be curious at poker. I've been playing for like 7 years now and it's a bit boring. It's just a bit mundane now. How do I become curious about poker again? How do I switch on that curiosity?
Yeah. So curiosity is a state that is generated in the body, right? It's not something that starts in the mind. People want to think that, oh, curious starts here, but really it's a state. It's a physiological state. And so, like with everything else, we can kind of like find access points through the body, right? So the easiest way is to just make the sound right? And just right? When you're really curious, you're like and to allow that sound to really reverberate and let the vibrations of that sound really go up and down through your body. Because some people, especially when I first start working with them, they say right? And that kind of like just okay, so we're down to here. But if you really take a breath and you right, you really feel that vibration. And this isn't in the book, but I'll offer this to you right now. Try this out, Adam. See if you can make that sound, and see if you can. It's even possible to have a thought in your mind while that vibration is happening inside you.
Hmm. Hmm. No, you can't. The vibration,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you go with the. It's weird. It almost like draws you in.
Yeah, it's impossible. I find it's impossible to like have a thought while I'm making that sound. And so
Wow.
you want to shut your brain off, right? You want to give your brain a little second. When I'm playing poker, I do this all the time when I'm in a tough spot. I'm like, and what it is like, yeah, I'm generating curiosity, but it also just like shuts the brain off from that circle of ranges and whatever, right? And
Wow. That's really, really powerful. I did not know that. That's really good. So, yeah, what happens when you guys watching do it yourself go, you'll realize that the vibration's like kind of really powerful and it almost like absorbs you in. Now, there's a difference between and and let it and vibrate through. So for myself, if I go, that's quite like, it's quite defensive and quite shut off. It's like, yeah, like it's almost like I'm done with that. But if you let the vibration go through, it turns on curiosity. And what I didn't realize with that is that it switches off the brain as well. So yeah, I was actually using this when I read the book. I started using that sound, and I didn't cotton on that the brain's actually going very quiet there as well. And yeah, it does actually make you more curious. So like, say you're at the poker tables and you're like super bored, you've now got an access point to be more curious. So let's say you're not engaged, and your opponent's just made a river bet, and you know what to do. You're about to call, and you just go, one, you've shut the default off, and two, now you've re-engaged with curiosity. And if you constantly do that, you're going to trigger yourself to be able to be more curious. And I really love the practicality of that, accessing something like curiosity through something simple like a sound. And that's where I think a lot of people, even myself, I struggle sometimes. I know if I'm curious, things are great, but often it's just a little bit out of my control. Oh yeah, I was curious today, I was a bit bored this time, and how do you switch it on? And yeah, just having sounds like that. Is there any other sounds, any other kind of body gateways into the kind of awareness or curiosity loop?
Yeah, I think just sounding in general, like making sounds in general that are not, related to any language, right? So there's no meaning behind any of the sound. Those are really authentic, present experiences of like what you feel, right? So the brain is always trying to translate and catch up to what the body's experiencing first. So language is not like the cleanest translation of our experience, right? So, whether it's or any other sound, ooh or ah, right? So these are all sounds that are 100% accurate representations of what we're experiencing. And so tends to work best to kind of presence because it has like a really nice vibration aspect to it. But really any sound that's not, part of an official language is going to be like a really authentic experience. And so I highly recommend playing with sound and movement and breath in all sorts of different combinations for that reason.
Wow, that's powerful. So yeah, what you're saying, like language is it's almost like it constructs stuff into a concept, and it's limiting at least by its framework. Whereas sound, what you're saying, is more encompassing. So it just brings a widerness of awareness. And yeah, I've been kind of looking at this myself. Like the language we use kind of creates boxes. Like language is always like narrow; it can never be like broad. So when you want to increase awareness, I didn't realize that sound was more expansive than language. But yeah, it makes complete sense because the mind can't create a construct. If the mind creates a construct, it's going to block stuff out in order to create that construct, which means you miss information. So yeah, I'm linking a few dots in my own head when you're speaking there on sounds. I feel like that's something I could definitely improve myself on, using sounds throughout my day. I work from home, so nobody needs to be disrupted by my weird noises I'm making.
Yeah. And the level beyond that is just not only not caring when people about what people think about your weird noises, but also being like, yeah, guys, this is awesome. Like you should join me in this party of making weird noises.
Yeah, yeah, you become the guy who like gets everyone else making weird noises.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. All right, so the final one on the training with awareness category was playing with pace. And what you're talking about here is how we have different paces of thinking, acting, moving, and different paces feel better or worse for us. So for myself, I've got quite a quick brain, and I think and move quite fast. Now, my default when I go in a negative way is I go too fast with everything. Too fast with thinking, too fast with ideas, too fast with movements. And what you were talking about is playing with pace. So practice speeding things up and practice slowing things down. So you can find what your natural good pace is. And I was doing this myself, and I realized going really quick with stuff and then going slow with stuff, I could see, I could pinpoint what my kind of good pace is and be able to bring myself back to it. So yeah, could you talk a little bit more about how people can play with pace, with their thoughts, emotions, and movements, and how that's powerful as a poker player?
Yeah, this one's really great. I love it because you can really tell the instant you're locked into the one that's just right for you. And the easiest way is to just start by like walking around. And so walk around and start accelerating until you're going like really, really fast walking, and then start decelerating until you're just like way, way too slow walking, right? And what you'll probably notice if you're similar to me is that when you're going way too fast, your awareness starts to go out, right? Because for safety reasons, you're just like there's a lot more danger of crashing into things when you're just walking around really really fast, right? And so your awareness kind of naturally needs to go out for safety. When you're going way way too slow, your awareness probably starts drifting inwards, like lollygagging is a word like thoughts. You're just kind of like wandering around slowly and thinking about life and all this stuff. That's my pattern, right? Opposite of yours. And so what you'll find is that when you've got it just right, you'll know because you can stay connected to both your inner experience of your thoughts, breath, sensations, whatever impulses, and your outer environment at the same time. And this is really cool. I've been to trainings that Katie and Gay Hendricks have done where they lead a room full of people, like 50, 100 people through this exercise. And when everybody hits their pace, you can have like 100 people walking around through, tight spaces, and nobody bumps into each other because everybody's fully connected to their inner experience and their environment. But when people are messing around with going too fast, going too slow, people are bumping into each other all the time. But when you hit that just right, and you feel it, you're easily able to like see the openings, right? You want to talk about being able to see the opening in a poker spot. Well, like when your internal energy, when your thoughts, your breath is operating at the pace that suits you, then you're going to see the openings in a hand of poker. You're going to see the possibility kind of like light up in front of you.
Wow, that's so good. So yeah, what you're saying there is like when you're moving fast, we're naturally drawn outwards, and that's probably like a practicality or survival instinct that we're moving fast. Things are coming at us fast. I need to be aware of the external because things are changing quick. And when we go slow, we've got more time to be internal because there's less things in the external taking us in. I didn't really think of it that way, but it makes complete sense. And your goal is to find like that midpoint where you've got access to the external with enough speed so that you've got the external, but then enough stillness and slowness to actually connect with the internal as well and finding that one for you. So I can completely see it, the practicality of that with movement in particular. That makes like a real good practical application. How would someone then transition that into the poker tables where it's more about the speed of thought and the speed of thinking? How would they then use that same framework within the poker context of making good decisions?
Yeah, I highly recommend doing the walking exercise first and getting a really good sense of what your it's called like an essence pace, right? What the pace of you when you're in your essence is. And when you really know that and you walk around in that pace, walk around in the world and start experimenting with that for a while, it starts to kind of lock into your nervous system in the way your energy flows, the way your thoughts go. It'll start to kind of like match up with that pace. So the more you kind of just get in your body with the walking, then you'll be able to kind of like know how to like speed up your energy internally, even if you're just sitting at a poker table, or slow it down, right? Mm-hmm. A kind of a little bit of a poker hack if you're playing live is you can play with pace shuffling the chips, right? Which pace is too fast, which pace is too slow, which one's just right. You can play with moving your body in different ways, whether it's like, just shifting your weight, which is too fast, which is too slow. You can kind of do it in a lot of different ways, but understanding kind of like the general pace through walking first is really going to help.
Love this. So what I'm getting as a general like trend line going for all the topics is the importance of understanding the body as a way to get in tune with the mind. Like the mind body connection is just everywhere, and we need to be fully in touch with that. And there's no like one size fits all, but getting to understand what yours is and what's optimal for you. And yeah, like I think what you were saying, by training yourself with walking, you're then going to see what speed of thoughts go with it, because the body is almost like setting the pace. The mind's then going to follow up with a certain pace of thinking, and as a result, that you'll get used to, okay, when I feel good walking, this is how quick I'm thinking. So if you start thinking faster at the poker tables, you can relate that to, oh, that's not my optimal pace. How do I slow it down? And just being aware of it, like being aware when you're going too fast, too slow, is super powerful. And yeah, you could probably like loop your awareness back. Would you say like, I'm guessing breathing would slow it down, but like say, for me, for example, like say if my thoughts are going too fast, I've noticed this, I'm guessing I could just loop my awareness to something else in order, either internal or external, in order to slow down the speed or increase the speed.
Yeah, honestly, you could do literally any of the things we've already talked about to kind of like bring yourself back into connection with yourself, whether it's take a breath, move in a non-habitual way, notice sensations, make the sound. They're all available at any time to kind of help you reset and go from there.
Yeah. So once you've got the awareness, you can use any number of tools in order to like recenter yourself. Yeah, love that. All right. So then the fourth concept we're going to dive into now, which is a really good one, channeling your emotions. So the way I look at emotions, they're just energy expressing itself, and we often give way too much weight to them, and we get dragged around by them because we don't understand them and we don't know what to do with them. And as poker players, we're trying to logically get them solve this emotional problem with logic. So yeah, talk about how poker players can start to set a framework of how to channel emotions. How do poker players deal with emotions, and how should they be channeling them?
Yeah, so this is like probably issue number one for a lot of, especially like high stakes players, because there's so much energy the more money you're playing for, right? And so the default way that everybody tends to go about it is to use more energy to kind of manage the energy of the emotions so that they don't get in the way, right? Because there's this idea that emotions keep me from playing my best, and that's just a story that people have created over the years around emotions. It's not safe, all that. And so what I want to do is flip it on its head and say that emotions, yeah, like you said, are energy. That's just all they are. They're energy getting expressed through us. And what if we could take that energy and use it to play even better, right? What if you could, every time you were having big emotions, learn how to like ride those waves, like you're surfing the waves, and then like redirect that energy, like Aikido move or something like that, and take the energy and then like I'm gonna play even better, right? So that's like where I'm interested in. Yeah. And so the beginning stage of that is just like learning how to feel your feelings, getting willing to experience the full range of human emotion whenever, wherever, for as long as needed, and learn how to do it in a way where that you can still also function in the world, right? Like I think people have this idea of like, oh, if I'm feeling sad, that means I have to like cry. No, not necessarily. If I'm feeling angry, I have to yell. It has to be this big display. But really, there are options, in between, where in between not feeling them and then just like going ballistic in public, right? You can get skilled at being with your emotions and and having them be a part of your experience while still functioning at a really high level.
Love this. I'm so on this page with you as well with that channeling emotions. I think for a long time in poker, we've been told to manage them or deal with them or inject a logic statement. And all of this puts you on the defense. Like the emotion is wrong, fix the problem. Oh, I feel emotion, that must be something's wrong with me. How do I fix it? And then your class has a mindset leak that needs working off the tables. And you're missing the whole opportunity to use emotions. And yeah, I think you've got a sports background yourself, and so have I. And I think from that background, you can see that like athletes, for example, they're not good at like managing emotions. They use them for performance. Like they channel them into like emotions, just energy, right? So if you've got heightened energy, should you get rid of that energy? Should you use it? And yeah, I was watching the documentary The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and he's like the ultimate. It's like the last thing you want to do is get him to manage his emotions. So Michael Jordan, just for anyone who's not like familiar with his kind of way of dealing with emotions, if anyone angers him, if anyone says anything, he will use that energy in order to perform his absolute best. So anytime a negative emotion of anger, rage, and often he would actually make stuff up to get himself to this heightened emotion. So what's happening there is he's channeling this emotional energy. So when you have a heightened emotion, let's say anger, tilt, frustration, what's happening there is your body is physiologically sending out a stress response. But that stress response isn't against you. It can help you. So it's sending more blood flow to the brain. It's releasing cortisol, which allows you to heightened energy to the brain. It actually lets you use energy faster and more efficiently. So we've actually got this physiological response that we can channel. And I love the name of the chapter, Channel Your Emotions. I've actually just done a YouTube video, which I haven't actually released yet, called Riding the Wave of Your Emotions. It's the same concept of that. We need to learn to channel them. And another concept like I was going down this route with is, what are your thoughts on when you get absorbed in emotions? So I'm thinking there's two things that are going on. One, learning to be very familiar with your emotions and channel them into performance and not be scared of them, not be, this is a sad state, this is an angry state, and you get rid of them, but just letting them, just being with them and not trying to control them. But on the flip side, there's an element where you can get lost in them. So like there's an area where you want to channel them, but be in control of them and watching them. But there's an element where we put our attention and awareness on them, and we just get absorbed in them. So I see this on both ends of the spectrum. I see this when players are winning and they're on an upswing, and all of a sudden they're the most excited, enthusiastic person in the world. I get so many messages from people on upswings, sending me graphs and stuff, and I'm always trying to balance them out, because what I see is they're riding their high emotion, and I know they're going to fall because they've attached their emotional energy to an external outcome. And as a result of that, they're now going to go the opposite, because when their external outcome comes difficult, they're then going to have a negative emotion. So how would you go about looking at that one? Because I think there's one element of like being able to feel the emotion, but how do you get that blend right with feeling the emotion without getting too absorbed in it?
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of around like, yeah, I get to feel my feelings and what do I most want, right? So feeling your feelings allows you to kind of like choose what you want to do from there. So it's like, yeah, I feel sad. All right, what do I want to do about it? I want to play my best, right? Or I feel really, really happy. And how do I want to go from here? What's my deepest commitment in terms of like who I want to be with poker, and kind of go from there. So yeah, like some people do kind of like get stuck in their emotion. And then, a quick way out of that, like, a lot of the things we've talked about, breath, movement, getting curious, like why am I like stuck in this sadness cycle this week? Like, I don't know, but I'm willing to like move and breathe with it, and really just like, be with it until it wants to stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're stuck in the emotion, and you like feel like it's like this icky thing that you kind of can't get rid of, it's not, you haven't had really like a clean feeling of that yet. You're doing something else. You're not really feeling it fully yet. If you're getting stuck in there, you're in your head a little bit. You're disconnected from your body. When you feel your emotions fully, they go through, right? And they don't stick around in that way. So there's something missing in that step if you're having that experience.
Yeah. So you're almost like using the emotion to then trigger the brain and then get lost in the head. If you actually were fully in the emotion, like remember, emotion's just energy in motion, so they're going to pass through. And once you understand this, and the only reason they don't pass through because we cling onto them or we suppress them, and if we could just get comfortable feeling these emotions, they'd be able to pass through. And yeah, what I really, really love about this part of the conversation is the idea of, what do I want this emotion to do for me? It's so powerful, and people miss this everywhere in life. Like, life's very malleable. Our mind's very malleable. Things aren't black and white. Things aren't like, that's a good emotion, that's a bad emotion. You can literally like trigger the mind to go, well, what would I want this emotion to do for me? And this channels the emotion into that response. In the brain and body are always trying to help you. They're never like, I think often people feel like we're fighting with ourselves. Oh, I've got all these thoughts and I want to, and they end up being like you against you battle. In reality, it's like, no, the mind and body are trying to help you, but they don't know what they want, they don't know what you want help with. And you're sending this mixed signal that this is a really fearful, horrible scenario. So the mind's like, all right, okay, well, let's release some fearful hormones to go with it and we'll have an emotional response. But if you channel that and you get in touch with your negative side of your emotions and how you could channel them, what do you want this emotion to do for you? How is my body responding in a way that is useful for me? And how do you channel the heightened ones like anger? So the way I look at it, you've got like, emotions have energy, right? So we've got heightened emotions like frustration, anger, tilt. These are on a high energy spectrum. So these are the ones like Michael Jordan would channel those back, those high energy into physical performance. When it gets too far, like complete tilt, you get a point where the emotion becomes too absorbing and too powerful that you lose the logical function. So I think everyone can relate when you're too angry, you've lost yourself. Like you said, that's not being with the emotion. That's almost letting the emotion trigger the mind to go into a spiral and you get lost in it. But for the most part, until you've gone like over a threshold, you can channel that energy back in. And I think this is a real big one. And this is what sports performers understand, I think, a lot better than poker players, that heightened emotions can channel peak performance. And when you look at like, say, someone who's very good at what they do, whether it's an athlete, or even someone who's going to publicly speak in front of 2,000 people, we make the mistake of thinking in their body, in their physiology, they feel really calm. It's like, oh, look how effortlessly it feels really calm. And we don't realize they've got the same cocktail of emotions that we have, that we would be labeling as, this is fear, this is scary, this is anxiety, oh my God, what am I going to do? We put all these labels on it. They have the same emotions, but they're putting labels on, I'm excited, I'm ready to perform well, this is helping me, this is going to make me perform at a good level, I'm going to give an amazing speech now. And all those difference is that they've just put a different label on it and they've done exactly what you said. They've learned to channel that emotion. So my challenge for you guys would be to think about the emotions that you're having right now at the tables and start to think, how could I channel that? How could it be helping me? How could it be an aid rather than something I'm fighting against? And yeah, I love this a quote from the book, which I'm going to read now. You said, I believe the number one source of tilt is a lack of congruence between what we experience inside and what we are actually acknowledging is happening. I think this is a really big one for people to understand, that tilt, anger, we're basically not linking the two. So we're feeling somewhere inside, but externally we're not acknowledging that it's different, and we're now clashing with reality, with our emotions, rather than getting in sync with it. So with that, like that lack of congruency between what we're experiencing inside and what we're acknowledging, how do we get those two in sync? If that's where tilt's coming from, how do we get those two more in alignment so that we're not clashing with ourselves?
Yeah, it's a constant practice of just being willing to be with what's happening. There's so much resistance wired into most of us from just the way we're born, raised, brought up around society, right? People don't like to have their feelings so much these days. And so there's just a lot of kind of like breaking that down and getting willing to be a person who can be with your emotions and know that overall it's much healthier for you than not.
100%. And I think you've got to understand like what is your kind of coping mechanism for not dealing with emotions. Because if you're like 99.9% of people on the planet, you generally avoid emotions, like especially ones that you don't like. And as a result, you have a coping mechanism. So if I look at myself, like basically if I have a negative emotion, if I don't want to experience it, I will keep myself busy. And that's my kind of way of not having to deal with the emotion. And I've noticed this myself where I'm just doing like kind of meaningless things, but it's in like the kind of busy spectrum. And all that was, the reason I would go down this avenue is because I didn't want to experience the emotion. I didn't want to let myself sit in it. I felt fearful. I felt worried about something. So rather than sitting with the worry and letting the emotion come through, I'd go, by not being aware in that moment, I try to think that there needs to be a fix. And this is like the most powerful quote from the book where you said, emotions that surface are not asking for logical solutions. They request undivided attention. Now, this is like really, really, really powerful. Like you could brush over this quote, but it's so powerful because as poker players, we're trained to look for logical solutions. So an emotion comes to the surface, we treat it like a riddle and we go, emotion, all right, well, I'm feeling this way. Either I must have to do something. I must have to do this. And the emotion isn't asking for you to solve a problem. There's not a logical solution. The mind's got nothing to do with the emotion. Logic up here, the mind, emotions in the body. There's a difference. You don't want the mind trying to solve this. So it's not asking you to solve a problem. It's asking you to give it your undivided attention? Can you sit with a negative emotion? Can you sit with an emotion that doesn't feel nice? Can you stop distracting yourself and just give it your attention? And when you do that, and like you said, like when you actually feel an emotion, like it actually passes through. Like once you start to like connect the dots, you feel like you see that emotion is just energy. It is like an expression of energy. And the reason it's not coming up is because we're suppressing it, generally with the mind going, well, I'll solve the problem and keep like I do, keep them busy. And the emotion then hasn't got anywhere to go, and then it gets pushed back down. And therefore we then fear it, and we're now lost in our mind trying to solve an emotional riddle. And I really think this is really powerful to get popularized to think about this concept of the emotion isn't asking for your logic. A lot of things do ask for your logic, and a lot of life is about solving problems, and you're really good at it. It's one of your skill sets, but the emotion isn't asking that. So the skill set you've trained that's got you so far in life isn't the same skill set that's going to allow you to deal with emotions, and you've got to learn to sit with them. How do you sit with them? So how would you advise somebody who was like taking this on board and they're listening and tuning like, yeah, this sounds really good. How can someone start to sit with their emotions? How do you practically start to be more comfortable with these energies that you're not really enjoying, like a negative feeling? How do you learn to sit with that without default going to distract yourself?
Yeah, the easiest things to do are to remember you have a body, right? So breathe, move, let yourself move. In addition to that, I would just kind of consider the idea of welcoming them in the same way that you would welcome like a good friend who knocked on your door and was like, I gotta tell you something that just happened. I'm kind of like shaken up right now, right? So that same kind of like sympathy, empathy, love for your friend, and you would just listen, right? You wouldn't be like, let me tell you. Well, I mean, I guess maybe some people would be like, let me tell you how to fix this. But ideally, if a friend was just like, very sad or scared, you would just listen, right? That's the most loving thing you can do. And so with the emotions, same deal, right? Just welcoming them in and just listening and just breathing, notice the sensations and just sit with it, right? And sit with that discomfort, feel what it feels like. It's uncomfortable quite often to feel big feelings. And that's what's needing to be done. Otherwise, it's going to turn into something bigger later and even worse.
100%. So agree with this. And yeah, what you're saying, like, it's basically building that relationship with your emotions and understand, like, they're not this negative thing. And I do feel like a lot of, like, the kind of poker kind of advice in recent years has gone down the fix the emotional problems. Like, it's a way you're thinking wrong. And as a result, emotions have become the bad guy. And I think in life in general, like, we don't acknowledge that there's this relationship. And like you said, welcome it like your friends. So when you welcome a friend, how do you greet them? First of all, you're curious, like, oh, hey, what's up? What do you want? Then you acknowledge it and go, well, like with the emotion, you go, how's it feeling? What's it trying to tell me? And then you use it. So welcome, acknowledge, use, and then you can channel it in the right direction. And once you get comfortable, like I think that's like the ultimate, like literally the ultimate in my head of a strong mindset is someone who's able to experience their emotions fully. Because if you're able to experience your emotions fully, like in a wide range of scenarios, there's not much else that can hurt you. Because all problems start from like the emotion, then the mind starts to think, and all fears come from this. So if you can get comfortable with your emotions, like your personal ones, we've all got our own cocktails and they express in different ways based on different like insecurities and stuff that's going on. But get to know your cocktail of emotions and learn to build that relationship with them one by one. So I know for me, like my one about like maybe insecurity of like not being good enough or not having the success I want at times gets this fear feeling that I have or an insecurity. And sometimes if I'm not conscious, before I know it, I'm fixing that problem. I'm avoiding that problem really, suppressing it by being very busy. And I notice myself and I'm like, I see myself going down a rabbit hole of doing stuff. And I'm like, it was all because I just didn't want that feeling. I didn't want it. I didn't welcome it. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't go, what's this feeling here for? I just ran the other way. And we get so used to doing this in certain areas, and this is definitely an area I'm currently working on, how to sit with stuff. So for myself now, if I see myself wanting to be busy, I go and sit down and meditate for 20 minutes, and I sit with the thought, and I sit with the emotion, and I try to say, is there something else? Like maybe I want to be busy after, but don't be busy as a mask for this emotion, and building that relationship with each emotion that you have. I think you talked about like linking emotions to sensations in the body as well. So this is all like, it's all the same trend lines are going through everything. Understand your body. If you want to understand your emotions, how does it feel in your body? How does it feel internally? And you were talking about how like fear feels different to anger. So can you talk about how different emotions often have different expressions and different sensations in the body that we can start to get in tune with?
Yeah, it's not like 100% or anything like that, but just kind of like a beginner's roadmap for where to start. If you're feeling sensations in your stomach, like they say like butterflies in the stomach, those are more indicative of fear. In your chest, heart area, quite often linked to sadness, like broken heart, you actually feel, the heaviness in your chest. Anger tends to, correlate more, in the upper back or just lower back, depending on how long the anger has been there. But yeah, you can kind of like correlate those to some degree, not always 100%, but you can also just kind of know that if you're having sensations, there's a good chance you're having emotions, and just kind of start there and get curious about like what's my body trying to tell me right
Exactly that. I love that. And yeah, like you said, if you're having sensations, you're probably having emotions because it's just emotions are energy in motion. I like that, like, because E times by emotion, it's a good way to remember it. So once you disarm emotions, like, stop putting them as a bad guy. It's just energy. So it's gonna. How does energy express itself? You're gonna feel it in your body, right? It's in the body, and it's energy moving through the body. So it's gonna express itself with a sensation. So get to know that sensation. Stop fearing it, and it all just comes together with the how. If you can spot it and be present and aware in it, you can then learn how to use it in a good way rather than blocking it off. And I do feel like this is, like you said at the start of this interview, like, it's not really touched on. This topic hasn't been covered, even though it's so powerful. And I do feel like because pop players are so logical, they do often grab onto only logical advice. So in terms of like, how can the mind solve the problem? How can the mind solve the problem? And when we go down this avenue of being present and in tune with your emotions, because pop players are a lot weak in this area and they haven't trained the skill set, they kind of just don't want to hear it. It's like, oh, nah, I just use my logic. So we end up with this like narrative that let's just strengthen the logical part of the brain. Let's just use logic statements. Let's just try to override stuff. Let's just be super logic driven. And then as a result of that, we don't end up present. We don't end up in tune with our bodies, and we don't end up in tune with our emotions. And as a result, we create this bad guy that needs to be defeated. And then every time he comes up, our logic goes, oh, well, I'm smarter than this. I get a lot of players who I work with who are super ambitious. And one of the things I hear over and over with their emotions is, Adam, why am I feeling this way? I know it's stupid. I know it's not logical, but I'm feeling this way. I'm trying to tell myself it's stupid, but it keeps coming up. Why am I feeling like this way? And then then they get more and more angry that they're feeling this way. And it's all because, exactly what I said before, emotions that surface are not asking for a logical solution. You're trying to use the brain to solve it. Just give the emotion your attention. And you've got to train yourself to do this over and over. It's going to be difficult when you're having a negative experience in a poker hand at the tables. That's going to be a difficult expression to take. But if you train yourself over and over, if dealing with emotions, you get good at it. And you get good in practice. In training, you get good at being able to use it in game. So I think a lot of players just pay attention that you're not going to be able to use these things instantly at the height of a peak emotion. Like say you're tilting and you're just spewing right now, but you haven't trained any of these body signals. It's going to be very hard for you to switch them on instantly. But what you're going to do is go, okay, I really struggled in that moment. I really lost myself in that emotion, and I lost myself in my head because of the emotion. And how can I start to train myself to be more in tune with emotions at easier times? Once you get good at those, you can take on bigger ones, and then your evolution as a poker player, your personal growth is all about being more and more comfortable with more and more scenarios. So yeah, I really love that. I think it's I almost say I know and talk about channeling emotions. I always hear managing, controlling, getting rid of, fixing, and it's always like even the language itself is defensive. It's like, well, okay, so if I'm fixing managing, it must be bad. And it's like, yeah, it's like, no, it's like, it's gonna be good. It's channel, yeah. All right, so the final topic, the fifth concept I want to talk about from this book is matching your state. And I really, really love this one where you talk about getting in touch with how you feel and almost being able to rate yourself how you feel from like say very bad to very good, and then using that how you feel to dictate how you play. So you were talking about how basically if you're feeling very good and very like good intuitive and in your body, then you can play more exploitative because your gut feelings are more accurate. But on the flip side, when you're not feeling good, you're not connected with your body, you're not connected to that intuition, you should then play more like kind of a GTO or more less exploitive. And often people do the inverse. I find like players like when things aren't going well, they try to be more creative, and then they wonder why. Oh, I felt he was doing this. And it's like, no, you tried to force that because you were feeling that you need to do something. So yeah, let's talk about this one, like matching your state, how you feel to how you play and how that looks.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I think that when you're feeling really, really good, and you're in the flow and you're present and you're breathing and you're connected to yourself, I think that's a really valuable asset, right? So you should really consider that to have like high dollar value in that moment. But you can only really leverage that asset by trusting your intuition when you find yourself in that state, right? And then when you're on the flip side, you're disconnected, you're kind of lethargic, not really invested or interested, and just kind of going through the motions. What you have there is like a negative value asset, right? And the way that that kind of gets blown up is when you try to like use your intuition and all the thoughts that are going through. You're like, oh yeah, that seems like a great idea. Let's just shove here, right? And how many stacks get lost doing that? And so it kind of cuts both ways, right? Like if you're feeling really bad and you try to play like a superstar, it's going to work out horribly. And if you're feeling really great and you don't allow yourself to kind of follow the trail of where your mind goes and where your attention's going, you're missing out on a lot of potential for you to kind of like just scoop up extra EV. And so money gets left on the table in both directions. And so the more you do all the things that we've been talking about here today, the more present and engaged you get, the more you'll just naturally know how you are rating on that scale, and you can kind of like adapt accordingly.
Oh my God, I love this. So it's so good. Like how you talked about that was really powerful when you talked about having like an asset, like a positive asset in your favor with EV, extra EV when you're feeling very good. And you get that extra asset by being more intuitive and using that intuition. So you've got access to a higher kind of energy field and more information. And if you don't use that, you're going to leave that on the table. So if you're being too rigid and not using that extra connection to make good reads because you're very in the zone, you're going to leave money on the table. And on the flip side, when you're feeling very negative, you've now got almost like a negative EV from using these gut feels and good intuitions. And the reason that is because like when we're in a negative state, we actually switch off the connection to our intuition, but we also switch off a lot of our like kind of problem solving abilities. So then what you do is you have a negative state, which then correlates with a negative kind of thought process. And then you've got this emotion that's trying to be validated by your thoughts. So you end up acting on these emotions in the wrong way. So you'll act on an emotion, then you'll logic it with your brain. So you almost like haven't got access to stuff. So if you try to be creative in a negative state, you're literally costing yourself. So in those states, it's almost like when you're feeling good, you've got access to more, so you should be striving for more. When you're in a negative state, you should be like damage limitation. Don't allow yourself to go too far off the rails. Create some safety blankets where it's like, okay, don't be going for this super exploitative bluff that you've never went for before. This is not the time for the new strategy. This is not the time to soul read this guy with this really strange call off. It's going to be a mistake. It's going to cost you. So I love that. Like there's the both ends of it, which are, and I think a lot of players, like I do think like a lot of really good players are very in tune with this, like kind of using intuition when they're in the flow. I think one of the harder aspect of this is not allowing yourself to be using exploitative players when you're feeling bad. I do feel like a lot of players, like you said, like cost themselves a lot of buy-ins by allowing themselves to make exploitative plays when they're just not in tune with that part of the intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we get scared or whatever, and that fear drives us to like want to do something special to make up for it, and those are the times that cost us the most.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. Everyone watching this, I'm sure you've got like 3 pages of notes. I know I have like to write up. And yeah, normally I'd summarize in one kind of clean swoop, but it's going to be very difficult because we covered so much. But I just want to quickly go over like a few of the concepts we covered just so like we've got like some practical takeaways. So the book, Put With Presence, at the end will guide everyone to your links. But yeah, the book Put With Presence is all about these concepts, and everything we covered today is way expanded in that book. And every chapter has 3 exercises or 2 or 3 exercises to use these in practice. So very, very actionable. It's not like something where you're just going to go, oh yeah, sounds good, but like how do I use it? You have very, very practical ways to put into your life. So the first thing we talked about was the zone of genius, and basically understand like how you feel in your body, and using verbs to basically categorize a good state, and then using those as an intention for other states, and getting in tune with that so you can switch on that zone of genius. We then talked about body intelligence, how like basically we need to get in tune with our body. It's a different energy field. Very often we're in our minds and not our bodies, and as a result of that, we end up missing information. And by breathing and movement in particular, we can train ourselves to get more in tune with our body and increase our BQ and our body intelligence. Then we looked at training your awareness and how we can loop our awareness and our curiosity and using sounds like to make ourselves more curious. And that's what I'm going to be taking away today. I'm going to be using all sorts of sounds. My girlfriend's probably going to be a bit freaked out by some new sounds I'm trying out, but using sounds to make yourself, to switch the brain off as well with the vibration of the sound, but also to switch on the curiosity and how the sounds and the way we express ourselves can actually switch on that awareness. That's a really, really good one. Then we talked about channeling your emotions and how emotions aren't the bad guy. We need to get used to them and have this good relationship with our emotions and feel them fully and understand what your emotional cocktails are right now and get comfortable with them. And how do you stop yourself from suppressing them or distracting yourself or trying to fix them? And like the quote I really loved was, emotions that surface are not asking for logical solutions. They're asking for your undivided attention. They're requesting your undivided attention. I think that kind of sums up that you don't need to solve the problem. Once you switch off the need to solve the problem, that allows you to experience the emotion better and allows you to pass through fully. And then finally, we talked about matching your state to how you feel to how you play. I think that's a really, really big one. Like just almost like have a note to self. If I'm not, because I think that when you're feeling good, you're naturally going to want to play a bit more exploitative. Unless you're like a super GTO fundamentalist, you're probably going to allow yourself to be a little bit more creative, and the players are probably going to tap into that extra AV available. But no, there's probably more than you're currently using. But the bad one, like, don't allow yourself to be using exploitative players. Almost like protect yourself from yourself. You've got this negative asset that you're trying to use, and every time you use it, it costs you. So understand that and create like a kind of framework of, okay, I'm going to limit my exploitative players when I'm in those zones. Is super, super powerful. So yeah, covered so much today. We could have talked for another 3 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. So thank you so much for today, Jason. It was really, really good. And hopefully the audience has got a lot of key takeaways.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for sharing the love for all this work. It's awesome.
You're welcome. So where can my audience go to find more about you? Obviously, you got the Poker with Presence book. I'll put the link to the book in the descriptions, which you guys need to check out, by the way. It's a short read, but super practical. Each chapter, you'll walk away with something that you can use instantly in your day. If you guys say, okay, this is good, but how do I take action? Get the book, read it. Like it's literally going to give you the key action steps and exercises that you can use in your daily life, both at the tables, away from the tables, to train all these concepts. Is there anywhere else we can send my audience to get to know you better?
Yeah, book is on Amazon, and my website, if you want to reach out to me, ask me more questions, or hang out in any way, is pokerwithpresence.com. And I'm also on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there lately, and it's at Jason B. Sue.
Awesome, amazing. So pokerwithpresence.com, and your Twitter handle, I'll put the links in the description, as well as the link to the book, which hopefully you guys are definitely going to buy the book, because it's such a great read, and hopefully this has motivated people to want to work on these concepts. And I think you've covered this better than anyone has so far. So well done on the amount of depth you've went into on covering this. I know it was like 10 years in the making. So yeah, really, really good. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you guys watching this have enjoyed it. And yeah, hopefully we'll connect again soon.